So here's the thing about galactic peace summits. They're supposed to be elegant affairs, dignified. The kind of place where crystalline beings shimmer with importance and gaseous entities pontificate about the nature of consciousness while floating near the ceiling. What they are not supposed to include is a human woman in a grease-stained jumpsuit, kicking open the emergency airlock with a sword tucked under one arm and a wrench in her teeth. But Captain Jessica Kowalski had never been great at reading the room. Sorry, my navigation computer crapped out near your station and I just need to use your facilities for like 10 minutes tops, Jess said, striding into the grand assembly hall of the terminus station like she owned the place. Her boots squeaked on the polished floor. Behind her, warning klaxons were still blaring from her less than graceful docking maneuver. 300 of the galaxy's most sophisticated species turned to stare. Ambassador Thorvik, a Vexarian who resembled a cathedral made of sentient purple crystal, made a sound like wind chimes having an existential crisis. Security, we have a biological contamination incident. Hey, I showered this week, Jess protested. A Nephron delegate who looked like someone had given sentience to a thundercloud with anxiety issues wafted backward. Is that a kinetic blade weapon? Those have been banned for 4,000 cycles. Jess glanced down at the sword she'd been using as a pry bar for the last 6 months. This is a multi-tool. Watch. She wedged it under a stuck panel on the wall and popped it open. See? Perfectly useful for every day. Oh wow, is that a bathroom? Thank God. Stop her! Thorvik's voice echoed through the chamber. Dude, I really have to go. Commander Rask, a Klikic officer who looked like a praying mantis designed by someone with nightmares, clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. He held up one bladed forearm to stop the advancing security drones. Let the humans speak. I wish to understand how her species achieved faster than light travel while still carrying sharpened metal. Jess paused. Okay, first, FTL travel was mostly luck and spite. Second, you guys really don't have swords anymore. What do you open stubborn crates with? Molecular disassembly fields, Thorvik said stiffly. What do you cut your food with? Nutrient paste requires no cutting. What do you scratch your back with? The assembly hall went silent. Okay, Jess said slowly. So you are telling me that every species in this room evolved past the concept of a pointy stick, and nobody thought that was weird. It is called progress, a Krill delegate chimed in telepathically, their voice appearing directly in everyone's minds like an unwanted advertisement. We transcended such primitive implements when we developed plasma-based defense grids and energy-to-matter conversion. Cool. Jess leaned on her sword like a cane. Quick question. If someone punched you right now, what would you do? The Krill's bioluminescent body pulsed with confusion. Punched? With a closed appendage strike? That is illegal under 742 treaties. Right, but what would you do? I would file a complaint with the Galactic Council. Jess looked at Rask. Are they serious right now? Rask's mandibles clicked again. Tragically, yes. This summit exists to ratify the Treaty of Perpetual Peace, which will ban all kinetic weaponry galaxy-wide. The logic is that such weapons represent our violent past. He paused. I voted against it. Let me guess, Jess said. You're the only one. The only one who remembers that peace is not the absence of weapons. It is the discipline to wield them wisely. Thorvik's crystalline structure literally vibrated with indignation. Commander Rask, your warmongering is precisely why the Klikic were removed from the Defense Committee. Now, human, you will surrender your primitive weapon and submit to quarantine while we determine how your species escaped our detection. Jess sighed. Look, I really just need to pee and maybe grab a sandwich if you've got anything that isn't nutrient paste. Then I'll get out of your hair. Or crystals. Or whatever. That's when the alarm started screaming for a completely different reason, and the Kraelor dropped out of hyperspace with weapons hot. The thing about the Kraelor that everyone had forgotten, because forgetting is what civilized species do when something makes them uncomfortable, is that they'd been really, really good at violence. Like professionally good, gold medal in murder good. Which is why everyone was so relieved when they supposedly went extinct 3 centuries ago after their homeworld mysteriously exploded. Turns out, mysterious explosions are easier to fake than galactic intelligence agencies wanted to admit. All ships. This is Kraelor Warmaster Xenix. A voice growled over every speaker in the station. Your weapons are obsolete. Your defenses are laughable. Surrender your technology and resources or be vaporized. The station's defensive grid activated immediately. Shimmering blue energy shields wrapped around the hull. Plasma batteries swiveled toward the 6 Kraelor warships hanging in space like metallic vultures. The firing solutions were calculated in microseconds by computers that could process quadrillion operations per nanosecond. The plasma bolts fired. They hit the Kraelor shields and dispersed like drops of water on hot glass. Huh, Jess said. That's not great. Thorvik's crystal body had gone from purple to a sickly mauve. Impossible. Our plasma weapons are rated for 900,000 terawatts. Nothing can withstand that output. They're using harmonic dispersal shields, Rask observed calmly, even as another volley splashed uselessly against the enemy ships. Designed specifically to counteract energy-based weapons. I warned the Council about this vulnerability 16 cycles ago. And we dismissed it because the Kraelor were extinct, a Nephron senator wailed, literally raining anxiety sweat that smelled like ozone. Jess watched the tactical display as the station's weapons fired again and again, each shot accomplishing exactly nothing. So let me get this straight. You guys built an entire galactic civilization on energy weapons, and now someone showed up with shields that block energy weapons. And your backup plan is what exactly? We're hailing them to discuss terms, Thorvik said desperately. They're shooting at you. We're sending our credentials as diplomats. They're still shooting at you. We're offering to mediate through the galactic court of, oh dear, they've destroyed our communications array. The station shuddered as the Kraelor warships opened fire. Their weapons, Jess noted, were refreshingly old school. Big metal slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Railguns. Kinetic kill vehicles. The kind of thing that didn't care about your fancy energy shields because it just punched straight through them using momentum and spite. Okay, I'm starting to see the problem, Jess muttered. Rask turned his triangular head toward her. You understand. You're all so advanced that you forgot how to hit someone. Precisely. Rask's mandibles spread in what Jess was starting to recognize as approval. We evolved beyond physical force, refined ourselves into beings of pure intellectual warfare. Meanwhile, the Kraelor simply waited for us to disarm ourselves. Another impact. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the station, an automated voice announced that hull breaches were detected on levels 7 through 12. How long until they board us? Jess asked. 17 minutes, Rask said. And what's your plan for when they get here? The silence that followed was deafening. Thorvik finally spoke, his voice small. We have diplomatic immunity. You have what now? Our credentials grant us immunity from physical harm under subsection 47 of the Galactic Charter. Jess stared at him. You think they're going to care about your hall pass? It has worked for 4,000 years. Against people who signed the same paperwork. These guys literally opened with surrender or die. I don't think they're big on bureaucracy. The Krill delegate's telepathic voice crackled with static-laced panic. Perhaps if we explain the ethical implications of violence, they will reconsider their aggression. Or, Jess said slowly, and hear me out here, maybe someone should go over there and break their stuff. Every eye, sensor cluster, and electromagnetic field in the room focused on her. Break their stuff, Thorvik repeated. With what? The Nephron asked. Our plasma weapons are useless. Jess hefted her sword, then she grinned. It was not a nice grin. It was the kind of grin that evolution had designed specifically to make prey animals nervous. Who said anything about plasma? Rask's mandibles clicked rapidly. You cannot be serious. Your shields stop energy. I'm betting they're not great at stopping a pissed-off salvage captain with a metal stick. Jess rolled her shoulders. Look, I'm already here illegally according to 17 parking violations and 1 count of unauthorized station access. Might as well add assault with a medieval weapon to the list. This is madness, Thorvik protested. You will be killed. Maybe, but at least I'll die doing something instead of waiting to get vaporized while clutching my diplomatic credentials. Jess looked around the room. Anyone else want to come? No? Cool. Commander Rask, you got a way to get me over to their ship? Rask stood. The Galactic maintain an assault shuttle for exactly this purpose, against regulations naturally. Naturally. I will accompany you. You sure? Seems like everyone here thinks we're idiots. Rask's laugh sounded like rocks in a blender. Captain Kowalski, I have spent 300 cycles watching this galaxy forget how to fight. I will not miss the opportunity to remind them. Jess nodded. Then let's go teach these assholes why evolution should never fully leave the Stone Age behind. The Galactic assault shuttle was exactly what Jess expected from a species of giant space mantises who had been overruled by the galactic community for being too militant. Which is to say, it was perfect. No sleek curves or elegant design philosophy. Just armor plating, emergency weapons lockers, and enough redundant systems to survive a direct hit from a small star. I'm starting to like you bug guys, Jess said, strapping herself into the gunner seat. We prefer the term insectoid descended species, Rask said, already running through pre-flight. You literally just told me your people eat their political opponents. Only during election season. It keeps campaigns brief. The shuttle launched from the station's auxiliary bay, just as another Kraelor salvo tore through the main hangar. Jess watched the tactical display as they burned toward the nearest enemy warship. 6 Kraelor vessels hung in formation, methodically pounding the station's shields, while smaller attack craft swarmed like angry wasps. So what's the plan? Jess asked. We boarding their ship or just knocking on the door? The Kraelor design philosophy favors intimidation, Rask explained, banking hard to avoid incoming fire. Large ships, heavy armor, obvious weapons, but their boarding airlocks are standard galactic configuration. We infiltrate through maintenance access. Maintenance access, the janitor's entrance. Every empire falls because someone forgot to lock the back door. They flew in close, hugging the warship's hull where point defense couldn't track them. Up close, the Kraelor ship was even more menacing. Black metal covered in angular designs that probably meant something threatening in whatever language the Kraelor used. Jess could see scoring from weapons fire, patched hull breaches, and what looked like decorative skulls welded near the bridge. Okay, those guys are trying way too hard, Jess muttered. Rask deployed the docking clamp. It latched onto an auxiliary port with a satisfying thunk. Normally this would trigger internal alarms. However, the Kraelor shields are generating enough electromagnetic interference to mask our signature. They're being too fancy and it's biting them. I love it. The airlock cycled. Rask pulled what Jess could only describe as a really angry-looking axe from the weapons locker. Galactic ceremonial weapon. Has not been used in actual combat for 600 years. Until today. Until today. They breached the inner door. Immediately, 3 Kraelor warriors spun toward them. They were big, maybe 7 feet tall, covered in segmented armor that looked like it could stop a tank round. Their weapons were equally impressive, massive rifles that probably fired something with a name like depleted uranium penetrator rounds. Jess could see their shields shimmer to life, energy barriers designed to disperse incoming plasma fire. Unfortunately for them, Jess wasn't carrying plasma. She covered the distance in 4 running steps and swung her sword at the nearest Kraelor's rifle. Because fancy armor doesn't help much when someone breaks your gun. The blade connected with the weapon's barrel and sheared through it like butter. Turns out, when you build everything to resist energy weapons, you forget to harden against good old-fashioned kinetic impact. The Kraelor stared at his ruined weapon, then at Jess, then back at his weapon. Parry this, you casual, Jess said, and punched him in the throat. The shield did exactly nothing because shields don't stop fists. The Kraelor went down choking. His buddy tried to bring his weapon around, but Rask was already there, his ceremonial axe taking the gun apart at the receiver. The third Kraelor actually managed to fire, but he was aiming at center mass expecting shields and armor, not someone who'd simply dodge. The shot went wide. Jess's follow-up didn't. Right, she said, stepping over the groaning warriors. Which way to their shield generator? Rask consulted a terminal. Lower engineering, 3 decks down. They moved through the ship like a particularly violent educational seminar. Every Kraelor they encountered had the same problem. Their shields were calibrated for energy weapons. Their armor was designed to disperse heat and radiation. Their combat doctrine assumed enemies would fight at range with sophisticated technology. None of them expected a human with a sword and a really bad attitude. "Behind you," Rask clicked. Jess spun and threw her wrench. It tumbled through the air and caught a Kraelor warrior right in his fancy helmet's optical sensor. He stumbled backward, blind, and walked straight into a bulkhead. The wrench bounced off and Jess caught it one-handed. "I'm starting to understand why you guys banned kinetic weapons," she said. "They're embarrassingly effective." That was precisely the point. When everyone has them, deterrence works. When nobody has them, the first person to bring them back wins. They reached engineering. It was a cavernous space filled with the humming machinery that powered the Kraelor shields. Sophisticated equipment. Probably cost more than Jess's entire ship. Dozens of terminals monitored power flow, harmonic frequencies, and energy distribution. Jess walked up to the primary generator and hit it with her wrench. Nothing happened. She hit it again, harder. Still nothing. She examined the casing. "Okay, this is actually pretty solid construction. Rask, you got any ideas?" The Click-It commander pointed at a coolant line. "Rupture that. The system will overheat and auto-shutdown within 90 seconds. Will it explode? Possibly. Good enough." Jess drove her sword into the coolant line. Pressurized liquid sprayed everywhere, and alarms started screaming. The generator began to whine as temperature gauges spiked into the red. Around them, Jess could hear the Kraelor crew panicking as their shields started failing. "Time to go," Rask said. They ran. Behind them, the generator didn't explode so much as it catastrophically failed in a way that definitely violated several engineering regulations. The ship shuddered. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. And outside, Jess knew the station's plasma weapons were finally finding their mark. They made it back to the shuttle with seconds to spare. As they detached and burned away from the dying warship, Jess watched 3 more Kraelor vessels lose their shields to internal sabotage. Turned out, once you proved the concept, every species in the galaxy suddenly remembered how to improvise with whatever they had on hand. The Vexarians were using crystalline shards as projectiles. The Nephrons had weaponized compressed gas. Even the Krill had figured out that telepathy works great for causing internal bleeding if you push hard enough. "We're winning," Rask observed. "We're winning with sticks and rocks against space pirates," Jess corrected. "Your civilization is ridiculous. And yet we're alive." "Fair point." The battle, if you could call it that, lasted another 40 minutes, which was about 39 minutes longer than anyone expected once the Kraelor realized that their technologically superior warships were being taken apart by the galactic equivalent of angry peasants with farming equipment. Jess spent most of that time back on the station, feet up on a conference table, watching the tactical display while nursing something the Nephrons called celebration vapor, and what Jess called sentient vodka that made her feel colors. "Captain Kowalski," Thorvik approached, his crystalline body now restored to a healthier purple. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to extend our gratitude and our humblest apologies." "You want to say that again? Slower?" "I want to record it. We were wrong. Catastrophically, dangerously wrong. The Treaty of Perpetual Peace was built on arrogance, not wisdom." Jess lowered her boots to the floor. "Look, I get it. You guys evolved past violence. That's actually pretty cool. But evolution's not a straight line, man. Sometimes the old ways stick around because they're useful, not because we're too dumb to leave them behind." A Krill delegate floated closer. "Your species retained kinetic weapons throughout your technological development. Was this intentional?" "Hell no. We just never got around to banning them. Too busy fighting each other mostly." Jess shrugged. "Humans are great at holding grudges and remembering every slight. Makes us terrible at peace but excellent at staying ready for the next fight." "A barbaric existence," Thorvik said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Maybe. But when the Kraelor showed up, which one of us knew what to do?" Silence. Rask clicked his mandibles approvingly. "The human raises a valid philosophical point. We achieved peace by forgetting war. The Kraelor achieved dominance by remembering it. Perhaps true security lies in maintaining both memories." "That's some fortune cookie wisdom right there," Jess said. "But yeah, basically. Don't throw out your fire extinguisher just because you haven't had a fire in a while." The tactical display showed the last Kraelor warship limping away at sub-light speed, its shields down, its weapons offline, and approximately 40% of its hull plating missing, thanks to some creative work by a Vexarian engineer who'd figured out that you could weaponize sound frequencies if you were angry enough. "They're retreating," a Nephron observer announced. "Let them go," Rask said. "They'll spread word that the galaxy has remembered how to bare its teeth. That lesson is worth more than one captured ship." Jess stood and stretched. "Cool. So I'm guessing those parking violations are getting waived?" "Waived, pardoned, and expunged," Thorvik confirmed. "Additionally, the Council wishes to discuss a formal alliance with humanity. Your species' unique perspective on violence and defense could prove invaluable. We're not really the alliance type. Too many bureaucracy meetings. Makes us itchy. Then perhaps a consulting arrangement. We would compensate you generously for your expertise in, how did you phrase it, unconventional warfare solutions." Jess considered this. Her salvage ship was held together with duct tape and prayers. Her bank account had 3 digits, and one of them was after the decimal point. And these people were offering to pay her for knowing how to hit things effectively. "I'm listening." "We propose a new branch of the Galactic Defense Initiative focused on kinetic-based combat systems and primitive weapon integration. You would serve as chief consultant and trainer." "You want me to teach the entire galaxy how to fight like cavemen?" "When you phrase it that way, it sounds deeply problematic." "I love it. I'm in." Jess stuck out her hand. Thorvik stared at it. "You're supposed to shake it. It's a human thing." The crystalline ambassador awkwardly grasped her hand. His surface was warm and slightly vibrated like touching a tuning fork. They shook. "One condition," Jess added. "Someone fixes the bathroom situation on this station. I've been holding it for an hour and I'm starting to see sounds." "That might be the celebration vapor." "I'm choosing to blame the bathroom." Around them, the assembly hall had transformed. What had been a place of panic and existential dread an hour ago was now filled with energized conversation. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades were comparing notes on improvised weapons. The Krill were demonstrating how telepathic pressure points could incapacitate without killing. The Nephrons were arguing about the aerodynamics of thrown objects versus projected gas bursts. Rask approached, carrying 2 containers of something that looked disturbingly like motor oil. "In Clicket culture, we share fermented nutrition paste after successful combat operations." "Is it going to make me sick?" "Almost certainly." "Then bottoms up." Jess took the container and drank. It tasted like someone had mixed gasoline with apple juice in disappointment. "Oh God, that's awful. It builds character. It's building a lawsuit against my stomach lining." They stood together, watching the galaxy's elite slowly remember lessons their ancestors had learned 10,000 years ago. That safety wasn't the absence of weapons. That peace wasn't the same as helplessness. That sometimes the most advanced solution was a really big stick and the willingness to use it. "You know what the funny thing is?" Jess said. "We almost didn't make it to space. Humans. We spent so long fighting each other that we nearly blew ourselves up before we ever left Earth." "What changed?" Rask asked. "We looked up and realized we were being idiots, that all our stupid wars were because we forgot we were on the same team." She gestured at the assembly. "These guys did the opposite. They stopped fighting so completely that they forgot how to defend themselves. Maybe the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. Remembering violence without celebrating it." "Exactly. Keep the sword sharp, but hope you never have to draw it." Rask's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Humans are strange, contradictory, violent yet philosophical, primitive yet insightful. We contain multitudes. It's exhausting. I believe I am beginning to understand why your species was able to solve a problem that baffled the galaxy's greatest minds. Because we're too dumb to know what's impossible? Because you never forgot that intelligence and strength are not opposites. That sophistication does not require abandoning simplicity." Rask raised his container. "To humanity, may you teach us to remember what we have forgotten." "To remembering." Jess clinked her container against his. "And to getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to explain why hitting things works." They drank. Around them, the galaxy began its awkward transition from post-scarcity utopia to something messier, more complicated, and infinitely more survivable. It wouldn't be elegant, it wouldn't be comfortable, but it would be ready the next time something with bad intentions came calling, and really Jess thought that was kind of the whole point. 3 days later, Jess stood in front of the Galactic Council's full assembly and tried very hard not to laugh at the sheer absurdity of her situation. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said, reading from the datapad they'd given her. "You want humanity to provide tactical consultation on kinetic warfare, primitive weapons integration, close quarters combat doctrine, and something called aggressive negotiation techniques?" "That is correct," Thorvik confirmed. His crystalline body had been polished to a mirror sheen for the formal session. "We are prepared to offer substantial compensation." "How substantial are we talking?" "Enough to purchase a small moon." Jess nearly dropped the datapad. "I'm sorry, what?" "We are very motivated to address our defensive shortcomings," a Krill senator explained telepathically. "The Kraelor incident has revealed catastrophic vulnerabilities in our civilization's security infrastructure. You guys really don't do anything halfway, do you? We have spent 4,000 years perfecting the art of overcompensation," Thorvik admitted. It seemed unwise to stop now. Rask, who'd been appointed as the Klikic representative to the new defense committee by virtue of being the only person who'd voted against the original treaty, leaned forward. "The Council has also voted to establish a new organization, the Kinetic Defense Initiative. Its purpose is to reintegrate physical combat capabilities into galactic security while maintaining our ethical standards." "You're creating an entire military branch because I hit some guys with a sword. When you phrase it that way, it sounds reductive, but accurate. Frustratingly so." Jess scrolled through the proposal. It was comprehensive, she'd give them that. Training facilities on 15 worlds, weapons manufacturing contracts with human companies, cultural exchange programs to study human combat sports, a full research division dedicated to understanding why kinetic weapons remained effective despite millennia of technological advancement. "This is insane," she muttered. "This is survival," Rask corrected. "The Kraelor are not the only threat. They were simply the first to exploit our weakness. Intelligence suggests at least 6 other species have been observing our complacency." That got Jess's attention. "Wait, 6? Possibly more. Turns out, when you publicly announce that you're banning all effective weapons, every criminal and warlord in the galaxy starts taking notes. So the peace treaty was basically a giant please rob us sign." "The metaphor is crude but accurate," Thorvik chimed in, clearly embarrassed. "We believed that our technological superiority would serve as deterrent enough, that our advanced shields and energy weapons would protect us. Right up until someone showed up with shields that blocked energy weapons. Yes. And you had no backup plan. We had diplomatic protocols, which worked great against people actively shooting at you. Your sarcasm is noted and deserved." Jess set down the datapad. "Okay, look. I'm not a military strategist. I'm a salvage operator who got lucky. You guys need actual experts, not some random human who happened to be in the right place at the right time. You demonstrated tactical flexibility, creative problem-solving, and comfort with violence that we have systematically bred out of our populations," Rask said. "Those qualities are not random. They are precisely what we need. Plus," a Nephron delegate added, "you are the only consultant who isn't terrified of actually using the weapons we're supposed to be learning about." "We attempted to recruit 12 other species for this initiative," Thorvik explained. "All declined. Most cited ethical concerns about reverting to primitive violence. 2 cited that they'd forgotten how their ancestors even held weapons. 1 species has evolved without any grasping appendages whatsoever, and honestly we're not sure how they got included in the original meeting. So I'm literally your only option. You're our best option. There is a difference." Jess looked around the assembly hall. Hundreds of species, each representing billions of citizens, all watching her with various analogues of hopeful expressions. They'd built a utopia, a real one where war was obsolete and violence was a historical footnote, and it had almost gotten them killed because utopias are fragile things. "All right," she said finally. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I'm not training soldiers to be killers. I'm teaching defense, proportional response, how to stop threats without becoming monsters. Agreed. Second, humans don't join your alliance. We're consultants, not subjects. We help you learn to protect yourselves, but we stay independent. Thorvik hesitated. The Council may resist that condition. Then the Council can find another species that remembers how to throw a punch. Oh wait, there aren't any. Point taken. Agreed. Third, someone installs a decent coffee machine on this station because whatever you call stimulant beverage tastes like battery acid. We can accommodate that request. Jess grinned. Then you've got yourself a deal. When do we start? Immediately, if possible. We have already identified 17 potential threat vectors that require urgent attention. Of course you have. Jess stood and stretched. All right, who wants lesson 1 in basic self-defense? The assembly erupted into enthusiastic chaos. Species began volunteering, arguing about training schedules, and debating whether they were physically capable of wielding weapons without opposable thumbs. It was the most animated Jess had seen any of them. Rask approached, mandibles clicking in amusement. You have created quite the stir. I've created a bureaucratic nightmare is what I've done. Welcome to galactic politics. I hate it already. You'll fit right in. Over the next several hours, Jess gave what she later described as the most surreal seminar of her life. She taught crystalline beings how to body-check opponents without shattering. She explained to gaseous entities that they could weaponize their form by rapid compression. She demonstrated basic knife fighting to creatures with 16 limbs and ones with none. By the end, everyone was exhausted. Several delegates were nursing minor injuries, and Jess had answered the question, but why does hitting work approximately 400 times? Because physics doesn't care about your diplomatic credentials, she'd finally snapped. Force equals mass times acceleration. It's not philosophy, it's math. As the session ended and delegates filed out, chattering excitedly about training regimens and equipment requisitions, Thorvik approached. Captain Kowalski, I must ask, does it not trouble you that we are abandoning our peaceful principles? Jess considered the question. You're not abandoning peace. You're just remembering that peace requires strength. There's a difference between being peaceful and being helpless. A subtle distinction. Maybe, but it's the difference between surviving and becoming someone else's cautionary tale. Thorvik's surface shimmered thoughtfully. Your species has known war throughout its existence. Does it ever end? Will we be fighting forever now? Honestly, I don't know. Humans are still figuring that out ourselves. But I do know that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst is better than just hoping and calling it a plan. Wisdom from a salvage operator. Hey, you learn a lot when your job is sorting through other people's mistakes. As Jess left the assembly hall, her datapad buzzed with incoming contracts, training requests, and at least 50 messages from human corporations who'd somehow heard about the galaxy's sudden interest in kinetic weapons and wanted in on the action. I'm going to be so rich, she muttered, grinning. Behind her, the galaxy took its first awkward steps toward remembering that survival wasn't just about being advanced. Sometimes it was about being ready, about keeping your guard up even in paradise. Because the universe didn't care how sophisticated you were. It only cared if you were still standing when the shooting stopped. 6 months later, Jess sat in her newly renovated ship, feet propped on a console that actually worked, sipping coffee from a machine that didn't require a degree in xenobiology to operate. Outside her viewport, the newly established Kinetic Defense Initiative training facility floated in orbit around a neutral world. It was impressive, she had to admit. Crystalline domes housed combat simulators. Modular stations allowed different atmospheric requirements. And everywhere, species from across the galaxy were learning to remember what their ancestors had known. How to stand their ground. How to fight back. How to survive. Her communicator chimed. Jess accepted the call, and Rask's triangular head appeared on the screen. Captain Kowalski, I trust you are enjoying your wealth. It's weird, not gonna lie. I bought a new ship and I still feel guilty about it. Guilt is the tax we pay for success. The Council has another situation requiring your expertise. Of course they do. What is it this time? A mining colony on the rim has reported raiders using EMP weapons. Their shields are useless and they've requested kinetic defense consultation. Jess sighed, but she was grinning. What's the pay? Enough to purchase a very small moon or a moderately large asteroid. I really need to start negotiating better rates. You could, but then you would be exactly like the rest of us. Rask's mandibles clicked with amusement. The galaxy has changed in 6 months, Captain. There have been no major conflicts. Crime has decreased 40%. Pirates are reconsidering their career choices. All because you taught us to remember our teeth. Teeth, swords, whatever works. Jess took another sip of coffee. When do they need me? Within the week, if possible. Tell them I'll be there in 3 days. And Rask? Yes? Make sure they have a bathroom that works. I'm not going through that again. Noted. Safe travels, Captain. The call ended. Jess sat back and looked at her reflection in the dark viewport. 6 months ago, she'd been a broke salvage operator with a dying ship and a creative relationship with Galactic parking regulations. Now she was the galaxy's unlikely defense consultant, teaching ancient lessons to species that had forgotten them. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. It was probably the best thing that had ever happened to her. Her second communicator buzzed. This one was personal, encrypted, and connected to a very specific network back on Earth. She accepted it, and a familiar face appeared. Jess, please tell me the rumors aren't true, her sister Rachel said. Which rumors? The one about me teaching aliens to fight, or the one about me getting paid enough to buy a moon? Both. Either. Any of them. All true. I'm basically a millionaire space consultant now. Rachel stared at her. You crashed a peace summit and accidentally became humanity's military ambassador. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad. Do you know what's happening here? Every government on Earth wants to talk to you. The UN is having daily meetings about human-alien relations. We've got weapons manufacturers fighting over who gets the contracts. It's chaos. Good chaos or bad chaos? I don't know. We went from barely space-worthy to galactic defense experts in 6 months. Nobody knows how to handle this. Jess laughed. Welcome to my life. Look, tell Earth to relax. The galaxy doesn't want us as overlords or soldiers. They just want us to teach them what we never forgot. How to stay dangerous even when you're civilized. That's terrifying. Maybe, but it's also keeping them alive. Jess glanced at her tactical display where reports from across the galaxy showed declining aggression, improving defense readiness, and a general decrease in the kind of stupid that gets entire civilizations conquered. We're not teaching them to be violent, Rach. We're teaching them that peace is something you have to defend. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You know what the weirdest part is? You're actually good at this. My sister, who couldn't hold down a regular job to save her life, is somehow perfect at teaching aliens how to not get killed. Turns out, being stubborn and hard to kill are marketable skills in the right context. Mom would be proud, also horrified, but mostly proud. That's all I can ask for. Jess checked her navigation computer. I've got to go. Another job, another colony that needs help remembering how to throw a punch. Stay safe out there. Always. Captain Kowalski, I must ask, does it not trouble you that we are abandoning our peaceful principles? Jess considered the question. You're not abandoning peace. You're just remembering that peace requires strength. There's a difference between being peaceful and being helpless. A subtle distinction. Maybe, but it's the difference between surviving and becoming someone else's cautionary tale. Thorvik's surface shimmered thoughtfully. Your species has known war throughout its existence. Does it ever end? Will we be fighting forever now? Honestly, I don't know. Humans are still figuring that out ourselves. But I do know that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst is better than just hoping and calling it a plan. Wisdom from a salvage operator. Hey, you learn a lot when your job is sorting through other people's mistakes. As Jess left the assembly hall, her datapad buzzed with incoming contracts, training requests, and at least 50 messages from human corporations who'd somehow heard about the galaxy's sudden interest in kinetic weapons and wanted in on the action. I'm going to be so rich, she muttered, grinning. Behind her, the The galaxy took its first awkward steps toward remembering that survival wasn't just about being advanced. Sometimes it was about being ready, about keeping your guard up even in paradise. Because the universe didn't care how sophisticated you were. It only cared if you were still standing when the shooting stopped. 6 months later, Jess sat in her newly renovated ship, feet propped on a console that actually worked, sipping coffee from a machine that didn't require a degree in xenobiology to operate. Outside her viewport, the newly established Kinetic Defense Initiative training facility floated in orbit around a neutral world. It was impressive, she had to admit. Crystalline domes housed combat simulators. Modular stations allowed different atmospheric requirements. And everywhere, species from across the galaxy were learning to remember what their ancestors had known, how to stand their ground, how to fight back, how to survive. Her communicator chimed. Jess accepted the call, and Rask's triangular head appeared on the screen. "Captain Kowalski, I trust you are enjoying your wealth." "It's weird, not gonna lie. I bought a new ship and I still feel guilty about it." "Guilt is the tax we pay for success. The Council has another situation requiring your expertise." "Of course they do. What is it this time?" "A mining colony on the rim has reported raiders using EMP weapons. Their shields are useless and they've requested kinetic defense consultation." Jess sighed, but she was grinning. "What's the pay?" "Enough to purchase a very small moon, or a moderately large asteroid. I really need to start negotiating better rates." "You could, but then you would be exactly like the rest of us." Rask's mandibles clicked with amusement. "The galaxy has changed in 6 months, Captain. There have been no major conflicts. Crime has decreased 40%. Pirates are reconsidering their career choices. All because you taught us to remember our teeth. Teeth, swords, whatever works." Jess took another sip of coffee. "When do they need me?" "Within the week, if possible. Tell them I'll be there in 3 days." "And Rask?" "Yes?" "Make sure they have a bathroom that works. I'm not going through that again." "Noted. Safe travels, Captain." The call ended. Jess sat back and looked at her reflection in the dark viewport. 6 months ago, she'd been a broke salvage operator with a dying ship and a creative relationship with galactic parking regulations. Now she was the galaxy's unlikely defense consultant, teaching ancient lessons to species that had forgotten them. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. It was probably the best thing that had ever happened to her. Her second communicator buzzed. This one was personal, encrypted, and connected to a very specific network back on Earth. She accepted it, and a familiar face appeared. "Jess, please tell me the rumors aren't true," her sister Rachel said. "Which rumors? The one about me teaching aliens to fight, or the one about me getting paid enough to buy a moon?" "Both. Either. Any of them. All true. I'm basically a millionaire space consultant now." Rachel stared at her. "You crashed a peace summit and accidentally became humanity's military ambassador." "When you say it like that, it sounds bad." "It is bad. Do you know what's happening here? Every government on Earth wants to talk to you. The UN is having daily meetings about human-alien relations. We've got weapons manufacturers fighting over who gets the contracts. It's chaos. Good chaos or bad chaos? I don't know. We went from barely space-worthy to galactic defense experts in 6 months. Nobody knows how to handle this." Jess laughed. "Welcome to my life. Look, tell Earth to relax. The galaxy doesn't want us as overlords or soldiers. They just want us to teach them what we never forgot. How to stay dangerous even when you're civilized. That's terrifying. Maybe, but it's also keeping them alive." Jess glanced at her tactical display where reports from across the galaxy showed declining aggression, improving defense readiness, and a general decrease in the kind of stupid that gets entire civilizations conquered. "We're not teaching them to be violent, Rach. We're teaching them that peace is something you have to defend." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "You know what the weirdest part is? You're actually good at this. My sister, who couldn't hold down a regular job to save her life, is somehow perfect at teaching aliens how to not get killed. Turns out, being stubborn and hard to kill are marketable skills in the right context. Mom would be proud, also horrified, but mostly proud." "That's all I can ask for." Jess checked her navigation computer. "I've got to go. Another job, Another colony that needs help remembering how to throw a punch. Stay safe out there. Always.